Call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have two citizens request to speak, and I'd call forward Maria Rudy. Maria lives at 826 Wilcoxon Drive, Hudson, Wisconsin, and you want to talk about school start times.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Good evening. I'm here to talk about the planned school start times discussion. Oops, pardon me.
Can you get yourself a little bit closer, though?
Closer?
Yeah, closer, just so we can hear you a little.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, you can even raise it up a little bit. There you go.
That better? Okay. So thank you. Last year, 5 other Hudson parents and myself started exploring the issue of school start times, and our interest in the issue has been born out of the tangible impacts that we see every day on our children in middle school and high school. And we had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Ouellette and Tracy Habish-Allen this past spring and ask for a community conversation between the district and the Hudson parents, students, and broader community members. And I wanted to say thank you. We're very pleased to see that the topic was addressed on the August 26th board working session, and that there was a supporting outline for how the community engagement plan would flow out. And we thank you for moving forward with that. As you work to finalize the community engagement plan, we ask that you carefully consider the makeup of the committee. As currently drafted, there are no committee member spots designated for healthcare providers and mental health providers. These are professionals who are trained in the science and research of human development and who see our children to prevent illness and disease. In addition, we know the research demonstrates a strong link between inadequate sleep and negative mental health outcomes, such as depression, anxiety, and self-harm. While the first charge of the committee is to review the school start times research, it would be remiss not to include community professionals who have the expertise and experience needed to help guide and engage in thoughtful conversation on population-level science and individual impact. We were also extremely pleased to see the district's plan to reach out and include students in this conversation. And as the committee is formed and the work begins, we ask 2 things: that the students have a greater percentage makeup on the committee than other groups, and finally, that students are supported as they participate in this process to help them prepare for the committee meetings and sharing their voice in a public sphere. In addition, we ask that there are very specific directions and guidance provided to other committee members to protect the students from real and perceived influences to minimize or dismiss their voice and perspective. Thank you for considering these requests, and we know that we are truly excited to see this conversation move forward for our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next up is Rick Persinger, and he lives at 512 Jacob's Ladder, and looks like you want to discuss shooting team.
Hi, I'm Rick Persinger, and I'm the head coach of the shooting team that's had a wonderful relationship with the Hudson School District for the past 8, 9, 10 years. And we've done I think we've done a really good job of representing the community and representing the school district. We've won many state titles and been to nationals and been on the national platform many times. And right now we service, or we have approximately 17 coaches and volunteers that make up our team. And I've got 3 more in the wings ready to take their certification and qualification tests. This past year, we had 98. That's a far cry from the 7 that we started with 10, 12 years ago. And it's been a wonderful ride. I need to thank Tim and Aaron Moen for helping us guide our way through. Unfortunately, in the last year, when the package for the rule package came out for the brand new clubs and such, we had a problem with complying with some of those. And through the direction of several folks and Tim as well, we decided it was probably better for us to step aside and develop our own 501c3 or be our own separate legal entity. And that's what we chose to do, and we set sail to do that. Again, we've been very successful from the time that we first started and put funding together for our package, it was like, $400 or $500 to start to go to that first state event. Currently, we have an account through the Midway USA that we've kept adding to, and we're able to take 5% of those proceeds out every year. It's a big amount of money. We have 255,000 thereabouts in that account right now. We take 5% out a year. It's $12,000 to $13,000. So we're self-funded. We also have some various sponsors in the community. We have several people that work at the 3M, and they do sponsorship hours, and then that money is sent to us as well. And then we have some other folks in the community. Luther Chevrolet was a sponsor of ours for the last 3 years, and we put their logo on our shirts. And so they provided $500. It was the last of a 3-year contract that we had. So we've been struggling to get control of our funding, and I'm asking if you please could sit down and talk through this to see if we can't get our funding back underneath our control, put it underneath our entity change that we have. I've submitted that paperwork, and I'm hoping that you'll agree that it's a good time to turn that over. Again, I want to thank the school district for being a sponsor of ours, or at least allowing us to be part of the school district. Again, we've got many kids that start out as 3rd and 4th graders all the way through graduation, and then we've got 3 or 4 folks from the college ranks that also shoot with us. And again, we've been really, really successful, and we want to continue to do that, and of course tie into the community and the school district. So that's really all I had to say. I'm just hoping that we can take the funding portion of things and get things turned around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have superintendent reports. I'll turn it over to Dr. Olette.
Okay, and I'll be brief. There are more updates than anything. Homecoming update, just as I think the board was aware, because we did have some people that were emailing the homecoming dance. They decided to do some things a little different this year. I think it was a tremendous success. They had close to 800 or over 800 students that were a part of it. And I think it went very well, and so we were very happy to see that. The high school team has done a great job with that. A lot of school spirit there, a lot of great activities throughout the course of the week, and so really proud of everything that went on. I was able to personally witness the spirit bus coming to one of the elementaries, and it was a lot of fun. The kids coming back to their elementaries and being able to have those conversations. The facility committee update, this is something we'll talk more about next week at the work session, but really, trying to figure out kind of what is our next steps as we talked about the other 5 elementary buildings and the middle school in the district, and how do we start heading down that path of, the 10-year deferred maintenance plan that we have in place and start knocking these things off. We talked about this about 2 or 3 months ago, that we would kind of come back with some options and questions and how we want to start addressing some of these things. So we'll go more in depth on that, but I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up that was coming. The strategic engagement update process. So we had a great couple of days with Gail here last week. Actually, I think it was almost 2 weeks ago. Gail is from Studer Education, and so she's our consultant. We had, I think, over 150 different folks. They were part of our focus groups, answering questions about what we're doing well, what we could do better, where would they like to see the district go. Studer's working to put kind of a theme analysis together on that, get that to our team, and then we can kind of start building from that, and then also sharing with the board, kind of what would be potentially next steps. And I think you remember at our last board meeting, which was on September 30th, Gail kind of walked you through those last steps as well, or not last steps, those next steps as we work through that strategic engagement update. And so we're looking forward to getting our hands on that information and kind of moving forward with it, engaging the board on that. The school start time review process update. We had a speaker come and talked about it earlier. We're hoping in the next few months to get invitations out to that committee and really trying to look to get a nice wide variety of folks on that committee. I think our big key is making sure we have people that can look at things in a very objective manner and aren't coming to the table one way or the other. And so we'll want to make sure we get quite a few people on that committee. I think it's going to be Dave and Aaron and Tracy heading that committee up. So I would anticipate that, like I said, we'll get invitations out to get that ball rolling here in the next few months. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. So questions about any of the updates?
Mr. President?
Rob?
And so the speaker made reference to no medical professionals being part of the committee. Is that true?
Well, we don't know who's on the committee yet, so there could be parents that are medical professionals, and there could be, a variety of folks on that. But as of right now, nobody's on the committee. I mean, other than a couple of we've talked about several building principals and the 3 that I just named off, but nobody's on the committee yet.
Yeah. Can we slot spaces, though, for medical professionals?
Yeah.
Mr. President?
Yes.
So in addition to that, the committee could choose to bring in professionals to speak
Absolutely.
at an evening, so it doesn't mean that someone needs to necessarily be there for every single meeting. They could be subject matter experts or participating throughout as well.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, it just kind of depends what the committee chooses to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, if there are some folks that may be on the committee full-time, and there may be other folks that may come in and provide their expertise on a variety of different topics, similar to what we've done with other committees. Yeah, I think, either way, sometimes, getting the time commitment out of certain folks can be harder than others. So, but yeah, I think both of those are definitely options.
I mean, I certainly think having people on the committee who are medical professionals likely would provide a greater benefit than just having speakers. And I think the difference is obvious, but I could be mistaken.
Well, I think
Don't need to
that
get
the
into
most
a
important
debate
thing
on
is to
this
get the process moving. And the last thing that I want to do is say that we have to have these quotas of certain number of people from certain different fields of expertise. If we have to wait until somebody can commit to attending 5 to 12 meetings, we don't even know how many meetings are going to be. So I think part of that is going to maybe have to be an organic process as well as once it gets formed and get going.
There'll be 32 meetings. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Mr. President,
we don't know.
I do think, though, that to the extent that we shared our plan with the community and received feedback, by email and here, revisiting, because we did already define certain categories of folks that we wanted represented. My assumption is that none of those are quotas, that we would not hold up, if we couldn't find 4 representatives of the business community, for instance, we wouldn't hold up the process. So I think, to me, it seems like it would be reasonable to revisit that list, having gotten feedback from folks before we actually go out and try to recruit folks to constitute that committee. That seems reasonable to me, so I hope we'll have a chance to do that.
Yeah, we can definitely bring back the kind of that outline to the board for a work session for you guys to go back over it and give us some more feedback on that, on direction you'd like us to go with that. That'd be just fine. Other questions? All right, that's all I had for the updates.
Hearing none, next up is a report on elementary math curriculum, and I assume this might be Sandy? Sandy, all right.
Thank you. Tonight's curricular report from Teaching and Learning is elementary math. You might recall that Lisa was with us about a year ago, I think September's board meeting last year, offering a report on a recent implementation. Elementary math is now in phase 4. Phases 4, 5, and 6 are called implementation years, with the focus on monitoring the effectiveness and also providing ongoing professional learning. So phase 4 looks at monitoring program effectiveness by analyzing our assessment data, and then also continuing to gather feedback from our committee members and our teachers, and then adjusting professional learning based on that feedback and some other needs as far as what the data is telling us. So with us again tonight is Lisa Skoyan, who is a curriculum specialist at the elementary level, and we'll let Lisa go and start talking about our resource and some other things that are going on as far as an update with math.
We just started year 3 of using our print and online version of Everyday Math. And as Sandy noted, we are in the reflect and revise phase of the curriculum improvement process for elementary math. In order for me to get feedback from the classroom teachers, I conduct curriculum roll-throughs 1 to 2 times per year. After meeting with each grade level at each of the 6 elementary schools, I look for common suggested areas of improvement. And the next slide shows the list that was generated by the elementary teachers. Right there. So what improvements have been made? The first is the profile of progress. The profile of progress that was created by Everyday Math had language that did not align with our report card. It was organized by question rather than by standard, and it was very lengthy, sometimes 2 to 3 pages long. Most importantly, when the teachers and the parents looked at the profile of progress, they weren't really able to get a clear understanding of how our students were progressing towards meeting the benchmarks for the standards at this point in time. So if Tim would open the profile of progress, this is the profile of progress that I created based on the feedback from the classroom teachers. As you can see, it is organized by Wisconsin academic standards. The gray shaded standards are those that are on our report card, our priority standards. And the questions are clustered by standards. So when the parent looks at this, they get a very easy or a clear representation of how the student did on the assessment. And the teacher can also use this to provide opportunities for enrichment and reteaching within the classroom. So if we go back to the slide, we'll see our second area of improvement was the assessment check-ins, or what we refer to as the ACIs. And an ACI is a quick formative assessment that the teacher administers at the conclusion of each lesson. What you're looking at here is the format that the classroom teachers decided to go to rather than using the questions that were located in the student journal. So I organized a group of teachers to go through and pull those questions out of our student journal and put them in a paper format so the teachers could easily administer them, collect them, correct them, and then use that assessment data to inform their instruction for the following lesson the next day. Our third area of improvement over the last couple of years were the presentations. Prior to Everyday Math, our teachers used smart notebook presentations when teaching the lesson each day. When we purchased our Everyday Math 4, we were excited to see that there were e-presentations already created for us. However, we found that they were very different from what we were used to with the smart notebook presentations. It was very difficult to insert a slide. Sometimes when using our white boards or our smart boards, the teachers weren't able to write on the smart board with the presentation or to manipulate some of the e-tools, and they had to sit and wait for it to load many times. So after working with our IT department for 2 years and the Connect Ed department for 2 years, we decided that we were going to go back to smart notebook presentations. I organized a team of teachers this summer, and we created smart notebook presentations, and we rolled them out this fall. This year, our focus is to improve parent communication. We are going to continue sending home our family letter and our profile of progress. And this fall, I've been working and going into the buildings and giving a refresher course for teachers about the Student Learning Center. And providing information on how parents can access the Student Learning Center from home. The next slide shows what the Student Learning Center looks like if the parents choose to access that program at home. And finally, you may be wondering, how do we support our teachers? Well, the Elementary Math Committee does a tremendous amount of work. They led many of the initiatives that I shared with you this evening. We also conduct the roll-throughs in our PLCs, or our professional learning communities. New teacher training. I provide a full day of EM4 training each fall for all of the new teachers in the district. And of course, the instructional coaches and curriculum specialist support.
And then next, our key lessons, what we've learned through the process. Once again, teacher leadership is key. So we recognize that our elementary math committee is just important as far as providing us feedback. All of the adjustments Lisa spoke to, that's based on feedback from teachers, funneling through our committee members. So it's just key to the work that we do. And many of the suggestions then with the profile of progress, the adjustments with the assessments, and the presentations all came out of that work. And then obviously Lisa's position as a curriculum specialist has been another key factor in our successful implementation as she works to maintain consistency of implementation across the district and provide support to district staff. Next, Dave will talk about measurement.
All right, so if we take a look at how do we know how we're doing and how do we measure our success, the first thing that we look at would be our forward and our MAP results. Forward, again, is the state assessment that starts at 3rd grade and continues up into high school, actually. And then our MAP assessment is the assessment we look at when we're trying to measure student growth. It's a little bit more growth-based than achievement-based. It gives us some achievement data as well, but it's more about looking at individual student growth, so how they start the year and then how they end the year. The other thing, and Lisa's done a lot of work with this, is utilizing the common unit assessments as interim assessments. Math is one of those areas that has a solid assessment structure already in place. So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, what we attempted to do, and I think we've done a nice job, is utilizing the data that we already have available. So when students take a unit assessment, those results are automatically tabulated by standard, as Lisa shared earlier, helps us make decisions not only at the student level, but at the classroom level. And then finally, Lisa had mentioned the formative assessments, those ACIs, so that the assessment check-ins are incredibly important because conducting formative assessment is a time-consuming process, and yet we know the payoff is immense. So we invest time and resources and training in that. And the next slide we'll take a look at is a representation of our most recent data. We're very proud of our students, very proud of our teachers. These are impressive results at the elementary level, and we're just looking forward to continuing to grow. So you can see the blue bar is our district, grades 3 through 5. The reason 3 through 5, those are the forward-tested grade levels. And then the state achievement at the same level. It's a percentage of students that were assessed at the proficient or advanced level. You can see the 17-18 year of that 71.5. That was the first year of implementation of the new version of Everyday Math. Again, it's our teachers that make this happen. They've done an amazing job. Lisa's support and leadership has been amazing, just outstanding. And where we are right now in terms of comparison, the reason I'm bringing these results forward, let me back up for a second, is that we look at elementary math on the scorecard. So whenever we're bringing forward a curriculum report and it's connected to something on the scorecard, we're going to share the most recent results with you so you can see how we're performing. And our vision was 74.8%. You can see we're at 72.1, so we're getting very close to the vision. That vision, if you remember, was looking to be at the upper 25% of those 14 very high-performing districts. This 72.1 puts us well above the 90th percentile in the state, and we have no reason to believe that we won't continue to grow. We have a really solid plan to continue to improve. Lisa shared some of those key facts, so we think when we bring these results next year, they'll be even stronger.
Very
And
good.
with that, we'll open up to questions to the board for Lisa or anyone.
Other board members, questions? Well, Lisa, thank you very much for the report, and great job on the progress being made.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a budget update. Tim?
We're going to pass, we left that one as a placeholder in case we had information from the state early.
That's right. I think you, through Nick, I heard that we were hoping to get some information. It's actually coming tomorrow, not today.
Yeah, sometimes they're early, but we'll be on time tomorrow.
So you'll be updating us as you do every month at our work session next week. We'll be approving the budget. Speaking of which, while we're talking about the meeting for next week, come to my attention, when we are setting the schedule for the whole year in advance, there was a change of moving the work session from the 28th to the 21st. And we had changed the start time on the 28th, mostly to accommodate me because I was traveling from another state. But since we've changing the date from the 28th to the 21st, I want to kind of see, show of hands, if we started the work session, which we normally do at 5:30, are there board members that definitely could not make that earlier half hour? If there's a great desire to start at 6 and stay here till 10 o'clock instead of getting out of here at 9:30.
No desire there? I like 5:30. Yeah,
Okay, so 5:30, would everybody be able to make 5:30 next Monday night? Yeah, 5:30? Okay, it's looking like we're going to be able to start at 5:30 for our work session next week. Very good, thanks for, next up, I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda items.
Move the approval of the consent items and the chief financial officer and financial and operations officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $4,075,753.37.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda items, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Consent agenda items are approved. Andrea, do you have anything to say?
I do. So you guys just acted to approve some retirements that I wanted to mention briefly. Certainly we'll be recognizing them more later in the year. But Donna Nelson, a nutrition services worker at the middle school who has 17 years of district service. Steph DeVos, our athletics and activities director, is retiring at the end of this year, and she has 12 years of service. Chris Cameron, who is a first grade teacher at Willow River, 18 years of service in the district. And last but certainly not least, Art Forrester, tech specialist, has 46 years of service in the district. So I think that's the most I've ever seen. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is. That's almost, the other three all combined are 47, so he almost matches that. That's like 3 retirements in one, so. Yeah, thank you to those that have served the district. We'll give more thanks towards the end of the year, but we appreciate that loyalty and length of service. So next up on the action items is the Hudson Hockey Association agreement, and this was discussed at the work session. We have a slight change from what was discussed there. Tim, any recommendation as to what the motion ought to be?
Did go back and talk with the president and the treasurer, as you know, about actually paragraph number 4 in that agreement, and they're just at this point not willing to change that. They may have another entity coming in that wouldn't work for them if we had that language. We did go back and forth quite a bit on that, but in the end, we did wind up changing it to a 1-year rather than a 3-year agreement. The Hudson Hockey Association also wanted to add, just make sure that you were aware that they did leave us with a $150 per hour rate longer than they had intended, and they reviewed the different costs that they have, including looking at a cost per hour analysis and rental rates, which include the locker room square footage, and they were still below market rate. So, you know, they're also looking at a capital campaign that may connect the rinks and build out improved locker room facilities and shower facilities. So possibly, depending on if there's maybe a partnership in the future. I think you had also asked for what rates they were charging other entities, so they were certainly willing to share that with us too. When we look at outside organizations, different associations, development leagues, et cetera, they're charging $200 an hour for that. And non-member charges, birthdays, personal ice, et cetera, is $180 per hour. And then their membership folks, if you have a membership or their organization is a member organization, it's $150 per hour. So that concludes, and again, I would recommend at this point that you approve this agreement as written.
Very good. Thank you for your report. Is there a motion?
I move that we accept the contract with the Hockey Association as presented by Tim.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion, a second. Any further discussion? You heard Tim's explanation. I said we had a good 20 to 25-minute discussion last work session of the various issues that or questions that people had, and Tim went back and he's reported their responses. Anything else that needs to be added to that? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the contract as proposed for 1 year, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes and the contract is approved. We'll sign that later. Next up are the 2019-2020 district goals, which were also discussed at the last closed session, or not closed session, I'm sorry, working session. And Dr. Olet, do you have anything to add to these?
No, so just as a heads up, from the feedback that we got from the board, we did change a little bit of the verbiage in number 4, change it to average score instead of percentage. I think one of the board members brought that up the last session. And then also we added percentages to the last 2 goals as it related to parents and community are engaged and well-informed. Other than that, they are, as you saw a week ago, so the administration would recommend approving the goals as submitted.
Mr. President, may I make a comment? Or do you want to do the?
We can do a motion, then we'll have all the
Okay.
discussion we want, yeah.
Move to approve.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the goals as presented. And certainly, first up, Sue, what is your?
Oh, I just wanted to comment on 3, the second part, increased participation in extracurricular activities in grades 6 to 12. And I just want to applaud that goal because I'm learning, because I'm meeting parents and their kids, that kids having a place to be, a place to identify, a place to connect with kids that are doing some of the same things that are interesting to them, I think plays a very important and positive role in their mental health and their sense of well-being and their sense of place in the school, and must have a profound helpfulness in terms of their the dynamics of their learning.
All right. Thank you for that comment. I did have also one comment as far as the goal number 5 talks about the engagement survey for parents and community. And we know that those surveys have been done for this semester. Those are going to get reported at the November work session. Is that right?
Yeah, we're hoping to have all of our reports back from the survey company for the November work session to be able to go through those things. These goals would actually be next year's survey data as it for these goals. So, because originally when we set these goals before we had the surveys back, so we're really looking at next year's survey data. So it'll be next October about before we know whether or not we hit these goals.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there
Yep.
other comments?
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
Just 2 things, Nick, for the sake of the audience, with number 1, 8th grade, 11th grade specifically, when we look at ELA from 49.8% to 56% as an example, noting that our children are either proficient or above proficient, certainly doesn't look great. So if you wouldn't mind explaining that to the audience as far as what it really means, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so, and Dave can jump in at any time, but you have to understand that proficiency as marked on the forward exam is in the 60th percentile. Wisconsin has one of the highest standards for declaring proficiency for students. And so although it may not look where we want to be, when we get to the actual district scorecard and you see where our final vision target is, I think it's somewhere around 61.5. That would mean that it would put us in the top 5%, about the top 5 to 10% of school districts across the state. A big piece doesn't mean that we rest on that, but we keep pushing. But I think it's important to know that the bar is quite high in order to consider someone proficient, and not just basic proficient. And so we'll continue to push on that. Even some of the highest I think right now some of the highest performing districts, haven't even really broken the 80% mark at the middle school, and these would be considered the high performing districts. So we'll continue to push on it. We know that it's not, and again, the 56 is not necessarily the end all be all, because we want to keep going, but we want to have some incremental steps along the way to hit. So, and you can see that even in the math and things along those lines. We are above the state average in most of these things, but average is not where we want to be. We want to be towards the top.
Heather?
Mr. President, I think just a follow-up comment on that question, and Nick, this is something that you and I had a chance to discuss a little bit as we were talking about a tool for your own evaluation. I think if this is a document that we're going to share publicly, but I'll be honest, even just for our own reference, to remind us as board members, it was so helpful when you were presenting and you said, so we're already at the 90th and we'll probably get to 95th. And so these numbers, I mean, in front of us, they're just numbers, good, bad, or otherwise, but to be reminded or to know that, you know, our goal for fifth grade ELA, getting us to 63% that our goal is really to get to the 90th percentile. I'm making up the numbers right now, but I think that would be meaningful and a good reminder for us as a board, but also to your point, as a community member, to not look and go, what do you mean only half of our students are? But to know, oh, if we get to 56% or 61%, we're actually in the top 5% of all schools in Wisconsin. That's helpful. So as we're finalizing what this document looks like, both to remind us as a board, as we're monitoring progress, but also when we're talking with the community about goals, I think that helps put it in context and remind folks kind of, we didn't just pluck these numbers out of thin air, that we've got benchmark in most of these categories. I think we actually have access to benchmark data. With the survey data, we have access to benchmarks. And I mean, really the message we're sending to the community is our goal is to be at the top of the state, and that's where these numbers come from. So to the extent we can continue working with this document to make that clear, I think that would be really helpful.
We can, if the board approves the document, you can do so with the caveat that we'll add the percentile behind each of the percentages. You know, so at least in area number one, it's easiest to do it in area number one, obviously, than some of the other areas, because it's, you know, as we continue to kind of push and pull, it's, not everybody tracks things the same way we do in some of the other areas, but in area number one, when it comes to academic achievement, that's pretty standardized, so.
And just one thing to be clear, when we do that, we'll always be basing that on sort of lagging data, because we'll be basing that on previous data collected by the state, because we don't get the state data. We get our data, then our data becomes public, then we get the state data. So there'll always be at least a full year lag with that. And then also those percentiles sometimes are not exactly as we had it stated on the report card. As an example, we can't pull grade level percentiles. So when we look at elementary, we're looking at 3rd through 5th together, 6th through 8th together, and then 11th grade together, but we can make that clear in the document.
And another clarification question we have, as you gave the report on the curriculum, we know that forward measures proficiency for 3rd and 5th grade, and we know ACT measures it for 11th grade. What is the 8th grade measure?
It is forward as well.
Forward. So it's forward for all the first three?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know what that ACT/Aspire was, but that's just 11th grade then.
Yeah, and Aspire is the 9th and 10th grade precursor to ACT. It's a assessment produced by ACT to be predictive.
Okay. It's kind of like in the olden days, the pre-SAT test. Okay. All right, very good. By olden days, referring to the 70s when I took it, so, all right. Yeah.
I think we studied that in school.
All right, is there, we've got a motion and a second. Any further comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the stated goals as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next up, I would entertain a motion to convene to closed session pursuant to the exact verbiage in the agenda.
Move to convene to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent G, to confer with legal counsel, who is rendering written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the board with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved.
Right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote is called for. Baumann? Aye. Brown?
Aye.
Hanson?
Aye.
Katas?
Aye.
Loglin? Aye. Whitaker?
Aye.
Johnson? Aye. The motion passes. We'll convene to closed session and we'll stay in recess until the room is cleared.